Victoria Marie, and I'm back with Scrapbooking for Mortals tutorial number 2. I get a lot of questions and comments about mixed media techniques, and so I thought I would do a few of these tutorials talking specifically about that, breaking it down in its most simplistic form. To get us started, we're going to talk about mist. In the videos to follow, we will talk about distress inks and stains, gelatos, watercolors, modeling paste, and gesso. So stay tuned for those. Those will come after this video at some point within the next few weeks. I might insert some other tutorials in there, but this is part 1 of the mixed media tutorials. These tutorials are designed for you to play along. So what you'll need for this tutorial, if you have it, you certainly don't have to have these things to watch the tutorial, obviously, is you want to get any type of mist that you have in your scrappy stash. It doesn't matter the manufacturer or the color, just grab some so you can play along. You need to get a piece of paper or a few pieces of paper from your scrappy stash, some washi tape, perhaps even a paintbrush, because I'll show you a technique using how you can paint with mist. So you want to get a paintbrush out. If you have some masks or stencils, you might want to get those out as well, because I'll be talking about that technique. And then, of course, I will remind you of all this as we're going along with the different techniques, or if I add something else to the tutorial that you may want to use while we're practicing. Of course, if you have any questions, you can always leave them down in the comments section. So what we'll do, just like the last tutorial, is I'll go over the product, what it's used for, and then we'll go ahead and we'll practice with it. And then after that, I will demonstrate a layout using, or I'll make a layout demonstrate. I will make a layout using mist. Okay, so grab your things and let's get started. Okay, so before we get started, let's go ahead and prep our work surface. One of the things you want to do is grab some type of mat. Maybe you have a mat like this, like a height swap mat that's designed for mixed media work. Something to cover your work surface with. I tend to gunk up my regular cutting mats a lot, and so I'm challenging myself to use more of the mats that I do have, specifically for mixed media usage. Another thing to remember is that mist do stain sometimes. And so I've been playing around with them today, and so my nails are kind of gunked up. But so that's one thing you want to keep in mind as you're spraying this around. You may have seen on scrapbook videos that some scrappers will use some type of box to contain their mist in. I will probably more than likely use this pizza box that I get my Scraptastic kits in. And so I simply would just put my paper or whatever it is that I'm misting inside the box, and it'll contain any of those mist splatters that can go that can go across your work surface. So if you have one of those, go ahead and grab it. So let's go ahead and get started on the first technique. I'm going to go ahead and keep this out and just use a blank piece of cardstock. The first technique we're going to talk about is just simply misting on the page. And one of the things that I found as I've been doing misting for quite a while is that whenever I'll just use this photo for example, whenever I'm creating a layout and I want to use mist, I want to make sure that whatever I'm misting on the page shows up on the layout. A lot of times what will happen is crafters will spray and mist and do all their mixed media, and may not pay attention to the fact that you do eventually have to lay your photo down. And sometimes if you've done all of that wonderful mixed media work, you don't want to cover it up. So that's one thing that you want to be aware of. And so I somewhat get an idea of where I want my photo at. And I'm just using an 8.5 by 11 for this purpose. And I'll probably use an 8.5 and 11 throughout this entire tutorial. So let me grab a pencil. And sometimes what I like to do is sort of mark where my photo is, because I know that I don't want to do a majority of my misting behind the photo because people aren't going to be able to see it. You won't be able to see it. But there may be some of this misting that I want to that I do want to put a little bit behind the photo so it'll show around the edges of the photo, if that made sense. So I'm going to mark a little bit on my page, and then I'm going to decide where I want my primary misting to go. Typically, when I'm making a scrapbook page, I like my mist to go in 3 places. Somewhere on top, somewhere to the side, and somewhere on the bottom. Of course, you can mist all over the page. You can mist in the center of the page. Wherever you want that mist to fall, let it fall where it's at. Okay, so let me go ahead and do a little bit of that. So I'm going to spray up here, right here to the side, and right here below. And then when I bring my photo back, I can see all that beautiful misting there by the photo. That's pretty, right? I have some that's jetting out from the photo. I have some here that's to the side. You do want to make sure that your misting is completely dry. This is just a photo I have hanging on my desk. I can certainly reprint it if I want to. Okay, now, depending on how concentrated you want your mist, you want to either hold your mister close to your page, and you'll get a more darker mist on your page, or if you hold a little bit further up, that mist will have a longer space to travel, so it'll give you some lighter misting on the page. You can certainly mist all over the page if you want to. That's totally up to you. But I tend to like these little clusters of mist to bring a little bit more interest to the page. Okay. Now, you can come back with some coordinating colors. So this yellow that I used is called Butter from Heidi Swapp. It's really, really pretty. Then I'm going to come back with some Primrose by Heidi Swapp as well. And I think I'm going to hold this out a little bit further, and I just want to do some light mist there. Now what you will find with some of these mist bottles is that you can either get a real fine mist on your page, or you can get some of these little sprinkle dots here. The cool thing about mixed media is that it's not a perfect science, and so I kind of like the inevitable to happen to add a little bit more interest to my page. So there we go. And in future tutorials, I'll show you how you can layer mist and gesso and modeling paste to add even more dimension and interest to your page. So that's a pretty simple technique. Something that most people can do, right? Well, everyone can do all of these techniques. It's really, really simple. Another thing you want to consider is that depending on the type of cardstock you use, the paper will buckle. And so you can see there's some bumps here. You can take your your heating tools, and you can heat the page so it can dry a little bit quicker. Heidi Swapp mist tend to take a little bit longer because it does have the sheen. Mr. Huey's maybe a little bit shorter of a time depending on the color. Each product or each brand has its different drying times, so you do want to be cognizant of that. All right. So that's the first technique, and just simply misting or spraying on your page. So next up, let's talk about sprinkling on your page. Sprinkling is a really fun technique, and you see it a lot on scrapbooking pages. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this. There's not a perfect science to any of the misting or the sprinkling. You just sprinkle as much or as little as you want to. Like the misting on the page, I tend to like to sprinkle in 3 clusters around my page, typically by the photo, by the title, by the journaling. Of course, you don't have to follow that. You can mist it completely all over your page if you want to, or just one concentrated area or a few concentrated areas on your page. So misting is really simple. You just take the product that you want to use, the mist color that you want to use, shake it up a bit. You hear that ball in there? That breaks up that product, so it doesn't separate. And you just take the applicator and you simply tap the applicator to get the misting that you want. Now, a lot of times it'll come out when you're just tapping the applicator in very fine little dots of mist. The further that you hold it up, the finer those drops will be. Sometimes you just want a tiny bit of mist, but you can certainly go crazy and you can mist all over the page if you want to. The closer you get, the darker those little mist dots will be, sometimes larger. You can certainly take your applicator, dip it in. Now I'm going to see if this works because sometimes it doesn't. And hold it over and let that product drip from the applicator. Now this works a little bit better with paintbrushes, which I'll demonstrate in a minute. But sometimes that product, there won't be enough on it for it to really drip. And if you shake it a lot, it'll have little bubbles, so that makes it a little bit harder for it to fall. This one looks like it's about to. Come on, of course it's doing it because I'm filming the tutorial. I'm going to help it out a little bit. So you see that larger dot there? Okay. So this is really simple to do. And again, I'm using my pizza box, so it contains those mist dots inside the pizza box. One of the scrappers that I enjoy watching, Mercy Tiara, has a old cake box that she uses, and she's been using that cake box forever, so whatever works for you. You can certainly come back and add another color, nice little coordinating color. I'm loving this new Butter by Heidi Swapp, and I'm just simply tapping and sprinkling and tapping and sprinkling. Okay, You can sprinkle in any direction that you want to, sprinkle as much or as little. Sometimes I like a little bit of sprinkling, not a whole lot. I can certainly go overboard. But again, like with just spraying on your page, you do want to make sure that that mist shows when you put your pictures down. Okay. Now, can you spray and then sprinkle? You absolutely can. So say I've sprayed a bit, I can come back and add a bit of sprinkling on there for even added effect. You can totally do that. Okay. Alrighty. Now, you can certainly, if you want bigger, bolder sprinkles, you can take a paintbrush and just like your applicator, I'm going to set my applicator to the side here. I'm going to dip that in and you can get as much product on that as you want. And sometimes I like to hold up my paintbrush and just let those little drops fall to create larger splatters. You can certainly add some sprinkles with that as well. Of course, you're going to get more product on that brush. You can add a whole bunch more sprinkles on there. And sometimes when I really want to be dramatic, I'm going to take my brush and dip it in and just jerk that brush a bit, throwing some splatters on there and just letting that product fall right off the brush and let it land where it lands. So a lot of ways you could do sprinkles. That was kind of Jackson Pollock-like. Not as dramatic though. By the way, he's not one of my favorite artists, so it's funny that I use that reference. Okie dokie. So those are splatters. Now, of course, with any tool that you're using, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but you do want to make sure you have something that you can clean up with, and I just have some simple, you know, cheapo baby wipes that I buy for that purpose. For my crafting purpose, I'm just going to wipe that off, clean that up, and that's a little bit stained, but that's okay. Alright, so make sure you have some wipes available or something available. And there you go. That's a pretty easy peasy technique. So you can do these sprinkles as light as you want or as dramatic as you want. Like I said, I tend to like 3 clusters of concentrated sprinkles off my page. You can do it a lot more haphazardly than that. Again, this is mixed media, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be linear, okay? So we sprayed on our page. We have sprayed and sprinkled on our page. And then, of course, we've done some sprinkles. So now let's talk about painting with your mist. Now for this technique, you don't necessarily need your box because we're not splattering paint all over the place, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it in place since I'm using it. And you want to grab some type of paintbrush, and I just use some regular economy grade paintbrushes. You know, I'm not a painter, so I don't need anything major. You can use whatever size paintbrush that you want. I'm just going to use this size for demonstration purposes. You can create a watercolor effect using your mist. So I'm going to take some more of this butter. It's just so pretty. Take that applicator out, set it to the side, and I'm simply going to dip my paintbrush in here. I'm going to tilt it just a bit because it won't fit. And all you need to do is you just sweep your mist, oops, across your page or in whatever design that you want. And it comes out looking like a watercolor. Pretty cool, right? You can just do that in whatever direction, vertical, horizontal. That's pretty neat. Okay, and that's a fun technique to use on like cards and things like that. So very fun, awesome technique. And of course you can do this in multiple different colors. Again, make sure that you clean off your paintbrush when you're done. How about, instead of paper, we do a little bit, let me see if I can find them. Oh, you know what, we'll come back to that in just a second. We'll come back, I'm jumping ahead. Let's use a different color. We'll come through with this pink, this primrose. I'm gonna dip that in there. You can create maybe a multicolor ombre or get a color in a coordinating, in the same color family and do an ombre effect down your page. Very simple. So you don't have watercolors, but you have mist. There you go. You just created watercolors with your misting product. So you're getting more bang for your buck out of this product. Pretty cool, right? Awesome sauce. Okie dokie. So the next technique I want to show you is using mask or stencils. So go ahead and grab Any mask that you have, if you're playing along with your technique, it doesn't matter the design or the manufacturer, go ahead and grab that, and then possibly some washi tape, and then some scratch piece of crafting paper, and we'll play along with stencils and masks. I really like using stencils and masks on my scrapbook pages because there's so many different designs out there, and you can do so many different things with this. You can also use it on other crafting projects. You've probably seen people use stencils and masks on furniture or making little gift boxes. I mean, the sky is the limit when using masks. Some of these masks come without a hard edge, so meaning that that design is nice and consistent even around the edges. Some of these masks and stencils come with a hard edge, and so if you were to mist on this entire mask, not only will you get the design, but you'll also get the hard edge on there. Now, you may or may not care about this. I'll show you a way that you can kind of conceal those edges to just get the design and not the edge of it. So let's just talk about the technique just in general. The reason why I told you to get out washi tape is because depending on what type of mask you have, you certainly don't have to do this, but you can certainly hold your mask in place on a project by simply using a piece of washi tape, so that way it doesn't move. Okay? So you take your, let me check out my product here. I'm going to use some Mr. Huey's Color Mist, switch that up. And this is called Powder Blue. So you simply lay your mask where you want it, and again, I want to pay attention to where I'm going to put my photo. So if I wanted my photo right here, and I laid my mask down, then I know that I want to concentrate my spray in the area where I can actually see the design of the mask. Sometimes I like to take my mask and do some designs along the edges, and so I just simply move my mask where I want it to be. Again, there's no right or wrong to do this. So place your mask where you want it, and in this demonstration I'm just going to set it here in the center of the page. Shake up my mist. Again, the closer in that you spray, the darker that mist is going to appear. The further that you take your mister, you'll do the lighter that spray will appear on your page. So I'm going to go ahead and just spray that out. You can cover the entire mask, or maybe you just want a little bit of this impression on your scrapbook layout, then you just spray where you want that design to be concentrated on your page. So I'm going to spray a little bit more, because I know where I want my photo to go. Now, because that spray is moving out, I'm definitely going to see the impression of that hard edge there. If you don't like that, I'll show you another technique where you can somewhat avoid that a little bit. So I like to hover my photo over that a bit to make sure that I got some of that mist out where I want it to be. And I'm simply going to just be a little bit careful here and remove my mask. And there you go. I got my impression there, and then I can bring my photo over and see if that's where I want it at. Okay, if you don't mind those hard edges, then that's completely up to you. Now, what I want to do immediately after I've used my mask is I do want to clean it, which is why I keep some baby wipes handy. I'm not obviously going to clean it over my over my page. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Okay, let's try a different design. I'll just turn that over. This mask was actually not found, or stencil was not found in the scrapbooking section, and that's another awesome tip to know, that you can find mask or stencils throughout the crafting store. In the craft and hobby section, there's some where there's the decoupage and, you know, kind of the altered crafting products. You can certainly find it in those sections as well, not just the scrapbooking section. Okie doke, so let me take some more Mr. Huey's. Now, of course, this stencil is not going to give us a hard edge because it doesn't have it. And I'm going to position that wherever I want to on the page, and then go ahead and give that a mist. Okay. Take that off. And then maybe I want to add a little bit more here. Okay. That's pretty. And see how it's lighter in some spaces and darker in the others. That's what I love about mixed media, because it gives you all these awesome different effects. So maybe I wanted my photo here. That's pretty cool, right? Super cool. And then I can come back and I can do some other things. Like I can sprinkle on there if I want to, you know, whatever. Whatever pleases your mind. Whatever pleases you. Okay, so that's using mask. Now, You're probably wondering, how do I prevent these hard edges here? Well, I will certainly show you. Let me clean this up real quick. And what you want to do is just grab a few pieces of cardstock from your stash. Let me take that out. Some that you don't mind kind of ripping up a bit. And we'll grab ourselves a new piece of paper. I've got a lot of this cardstock, so I'm okay with using it for this purpose. Alrighty, so I got a few little scratch papers here. And say I wanted to do this mask, okay? I'm simply going to take my pieces of extra scraps, and I'm going to cover that hard edge. Let's rip that up. I'm going to cover that hard edge a bit, so that I am only left with my impression. Oh, that might not be straight enough. I won't be too picky. Excuse me. Oh, goodness. I won't be too picky, since this is for demo only. Okay. I want to focus on the design. Okay. So you cover that up with as many of these little scratch pieces that you need. You position your stencil wherever you want to on your page, and then you simply come in and do your misting. And I usually keep these little pieces in my little pizza box here that I use for misting. And there you go. Now it kind of caught that edge a bit, but as you can see, I just have that impression, and I don't have the hard edge that I did on that one. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so you're simply going to cover up with your scratch pieces of paper that little hard edge there all around, so it's just the design that's showing. Alright. And then, of course, I just keep these to hang out inside my box. Okay, so that's using stencils and mask, and I think really there's probably no difference between a stencil and a mask, to be honest with you. They both do the same thing, so I'll just say mask. Now you can certainly come back and you can layer different colors on your mask. So I'm going to wipe that off, and I'm going to come back over this with a different color. You can reposition your mask in the design, so maybe I want to offset this a bit. I'm going to take some of this butter. I'm going to mist that very lightly. Look at that. Pretty fun, right? So I'm just layering different colors on there. And if you offset your mask to the pattern, then you can create a whole nother effect. I'm going to hold that right here. That's another way you can kind of lessen that hard edge just a bit. There you go. So you can literally create your own pattern paper using mist and stencils. That's pretty fun. And I like those colors together, so I need to remember that. Again, being mindful of photo placement so you can actually see all that mixed media work that you've just done. Alrighty. Pretty fun. See, some of you guys are going to watch this tutorial and you're going to be like, oh my god, Victoria, I don't know what I was worried about all these years of not using this. You have saved my life. I know. Saving one crafter after another. Okay, be sure to wipe off your stencils so they're nice and clean and let those hang out to dry. And now we're going to talk about using your mist to color some embellishments and things that we like putting on our page. So I'll be back with that in just a moment. Okay, so the last technique I want to show you is how you can use your mist to alter or embellish, add some interest to a variety of different embellishments that we often use for scrapbooking. So I have just a simple tag here, some flowers, which I hardly ever use flowers, so I'm surprised I have these in my stash, and then some wood veneer, just as examples of ways that you can use mist. So let's use the wood veneer first. You can do a couple of different things. You can certainly paint directly on to your embellishment, and of course you can just simply mist on your embellishment. So for this star, I'm going to use some Mr. Huey's powder blue and shake that up a little bit. And all you have to do, and again, the closer in, the more product you get, the further out, the more that product spreads. So I'm just simply going to spray on my wood veneer and then set that aside to dry. And it'll give that wood veneer a nice color. You can certainly, if you want to, take a paper towel or a baby wipe, and if you want to lessen that color a bit, you can dab it. So say I just wanted to stain that a bit just so it can have some color, you can certainly do that. Once it dries, you can come back over it again with a little bit more if you need a little bit more product, and just kind of let it sit. Okay. Let's try this other star. I'm going to use some of that butter again from Heidi Swapp. And of course the Heidi Swapp one adds a little bit of sheen to it. So then I have this little sparkly star. So you're getting a lot more mileage out of this product. So I'm going to set those to the side. And that's what I like about mist. I can use it for more than just one type of technique. And it definitely saves you money down the road, because while I may want a blue star or a yellow star, I may not have it in my stash, but I can certainly make one. All right, so what about flowers? Of course, Prima flowers cost a lot. We all love Prima flowers. You can just get some of these economy flowers at your local craft store and do the same and do some altering. And I'm going to bring out some Perfect Pearls. Perfect Pearls is a shimmer mist. And you've probably seen this a lot in videos where people are making mini albums and things. They want to embellish their mini albums, particularly the more ornate mini albums, so you can add a little bit more interest. I'm going to shake this up. I haven't used this in forever. So I got to shake it up good. Okay, so maybe I want a pretty pink flower. Now again, I can paint on my little flower or whatever embellishment that I'm altering, or I can just simply spray on it. So I think I'm just going to spray my flower. And automatically it's taking a life of its own. Okay, and it puffed up that flower. Now you do want to be careful, of course, when you're putting water to paper products, because it does warp. So you want to make sure that these dry. You can take your heat gun and you can dry your different embellishments. Or you can just set them to the side and let them dry on their own. Okay. Then you can come over, oops, that doesn't go there. I put a different lid on there. Then you can come over your misted embellishments with like say Perfect Pearls. There's also an adhesive mediums that you can use, glossy accents, things of that nature, to really bring some more interest to it. So just a little bit further into your embellishing of your items. And then of course you can overlay with some other things like Perfect Pearls. Oh, come on. It's not going to come out, is it? There we go. And to add some interest on there as well. So I just created that plain little white flower and I just turned it into a pink flower. Pretty simple, right? I don't know what lid I just put on here. Whose lid is that? I think that's this one and that's this one. Okay, let me get another baby wipe. And as you can tell, I'm wiping off my surface in between all of this. Okay. And maybe now I want to do something a little bit different. So let's do this powder blue. And maybe now I want to paint over my embellishment. You can certainly do that. And you can do any type of painting technique that you want. It still has a little bit of that green on there, but that's okay. Alright. Of course, now that flower's taking on that color, so that's really pretty. Some of you are probably thinking, yeah, I can totally do this. I can totally do this. Alright? So that'd be pretty. Let's do one more. Let's do that butter. This time I'm going to spray it. And I can spray as little or as much as I want. Maybe I just want a little bit of yellow on that flower. Look how pretty that is. Very cool. What about my tag here that I set out? I think what I want to do for that, I'll show you a cool little technique. is I want to create, maybe I want to create a diagonal. I'm going to take my washi tape, and of course this is fun because you can create different types of designs and mist and remove your washi tape, and voila, it kind of serves sort of like as a mask. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to take it here, and I want the bottom portion of this mask to be the silver color. So I'm going to cover that up. But I should not have done that. And then I'm going to just spritz it as much or as little as I want. And take that off. And I've just created a custom tag using my mist. And of course it's going to warp a little bit because of that moisture, but that's okay. And I can take a paper towel and blot it, or I can just leave it the way that it is. And then I can come back through and further embellish it. Pretty fun, right? So you can totally, and I just showed you 3 different embellishments. You can take any type of embellishment and use these misting products on there to decorate or add a little bit more interest on there. So some of you are probably thinking, I can do this? Well, you're right. You can totally do this. You can absolutely do this. We'll clean all this up, and then we will talk about using some of these different techniques on an actual scrapbook page. Okay, so before we move into making an actual layout, which by the way, if you're wanting to scrapbook a layout with me, go ahead and grab your different elements that you want for your layout from your papers and your photos and the different embellishments, and of course don't forget your mist as well. And then we'll make a layout together. But let's talk about the techniques that we've gone over. The first technique we talked about was actually just misting on the page. Very easy and a lot of fun to do. We also talked about adding sprinkles to the page with your mist. We went through watercoloring on your paper, or just painting on your paper. And you can certainly paint on embellishments as well with your watercolors. Then we talked about using masks and stencils on your page to add some visual interest using your mist. And then lastly, we used mist on a variety of different embellishments, from wood veneer to different flowers, and of course a tag. Of course, you are certainly not limited to just those items. You can mist and paint over anything. I actually might use this tag for something that came out really pretty. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and make a scrapbook page using mist. Now you can decide which technique you want to use. I think I'm going to do some spraying directly on the layout, and then I think I'm going to do some sprinkling and maybe even follow that up with some masks. So stay with me, go ahead and grab your materials, and we'll come back and we'll make a page. Okay, so now we're ready to make a layout, and I'm going to scrapbook this picture that I took today of this delicious hamburger that I had. I love food. I absolutely love food. There is a restaurant called Kincaid's here in my area, and it is so good. And I had a bacon cheeseburger today, so I thought, hey, this will be great. And plus, in my Scraptastic kit for June, I got this really cute stamp set that has eat and yum and everything on it, so I wanted to use it. So I'm going to use some paper that I cut from some powdered paper from the Scraptastic June kit, and then I have a couple little embellishments that I might use. I'm going to do a large title on here because I really love these little tile fonts. I'm going to use that. But more importantly than all of that is to demonstrate some of the misting that we just went over. So I'm going to move that out the way. I'm going to grab my box, and if you hear a little bit of noise, that's my little one in the background. She's joining me. Okay. As a part of the kit, we get these free stencils. So for every other kit that you purchase, you get a stencil. And I want to spritz this going down the page. So I'm going to line that up. And then I'm going to grab some of those little extra pieces of paper that I had earlier, because I don't want the hard edge. And I'm going to do this sort of haphazardly around the page here, and put here because I only want the image and the stencil to show. And because this kit has a lot of really pretty yellows too, I'm going to use this Butter by Heidi Swapp. Mix that up. I'm just going to mist that stencil. A little leaky there. Move these out the way for just a second. Okay, and I want that very subtle on the page. So I'm going to do that again a few times around the page. And you can certainly do this as light or as dark as you want to, as I mentioned earlier. But the idea is I want this to show up as prominently on the page as possible. And I like to use these little stencils that come with the kit because, one, they're little, they're easy to use, and two, I want to get as much value out of my kits as possible. So I want to use every little bit that comes with it. Okay, smooth those out the way. Then I want some more coming down here. As many as I can get. Essentially, I'm just sort of creating my own pattern paper. So for those of you who like to hoard paper, consider making your own. That might save you a bit of money. I love pattern paper, so that was really a PSA to me. Okay. So, I'm going to move that out the way, and then I want a little bit more coming here. Alrighty. There's my assistant's little hand. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Spray that some more. Now, of course, that mist is starting to build up on my mask, so I need to be a bit careful with this as to not drip on my page if I don't want that. And then I think I'm going to do a little bit more coming up over here. So I'm going to cover that. A little bit going off the page there. And then I think I might do some here. And you just can keep going as much or as little as you want on your page. Okay. And then, move your hand, Bucky. See how that is right there? I did not want that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off my stencil just a bit because it's starting to drip. It took a little bit too long, but that's okay. Okay, sorry about that. We had a bit of a little accident. The camera fell over. Okay, so here is the misting that I did using my stencil that came with the Scraptastic kit that I'm using. And then I think I want to come through with that same color, and I want to add a little bit of sprinkles to that. So I think I'm going to add some right up here, some right down here. And with mixed media, expect to have some imperfections. It's okay, it happens. And that can be a little challenging for those of us who are a bit more linear in our scrapbooking. All right, so I'm going to dry up this page a bit, and then we'll put the rest of the layout together. All right, so now I'm going to mount all of that on this really pretty sort of turquoisey blue paper because I want a bit of that showing underneath. So I'm going to grab my adhesive and adhere that on. And usually what I like to do is add the adhesive on the edge of that paper that I've put a lot of mixed media on, And then depending on how much product I have on my page, I'm going to add a lot in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and mount that on. Okay. So I've just created sort of my own little pattern paper there. Pretty cool. Now my photo is going to go right up here.
It's a hamburger.
Yes, it is a hamburger. Okay, I think I'm going to put those layers like that, I believe. Yeah. And then my title, I'm going to come through with my title. Is I'm going to put yum right here. And so some of that stenciling and stuff you can actually see. And actually that boo-boo kind of shows okay right there. So you never know. You never know. So that's really nice. Okay, so I'm going to move that out the way. Let's go ahead and get the layers. Have that, just a little bit of that pink showing. Let's hope so. How that was. Do I like that? Here we go. Okay. Then to the photo, I'm going to add a little tab here. This little yellow tab. I love these tabs. They're so fun. And come in here. Okay, this is the point where the volume cuts out for some reason. Okay, so I'm taking my tiny attacher and I am attaching that label to the top of my layer. And I'm going to reposition that back at the top of the page. And in a minute now, I think I'm going to go ahead and work on the title. All of the materials that I'm using are from the Scraptastic June kit. And this is just such a fun kit. It had a lot of little embellishments in there referring to dining and eating out and food. And so this just was absolutely perfect for this page. So I add a little cork embellishment that has a knife, spoon, and fork. And I'm looking at the stamp set, and I thought I was going to stamp a lot more than what I actually did. But I pull out another stamp set because I want to extend the title. So I'm going to bring those tile letters back and spell out yum. And then underneath that, I'm going to take that stamp set you see, and I'm going to put "This is so good" underneath that. I'm using some Tombow Mono, and I'm adding that to the blue part of the letters so it doesn't show through the clear part. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the misting that I did with the stencil is showing in between those letters, so it gives it a really cool effect. So I'm going to position that. I really love these big letters. There was a time when I probably would have not used these. Okay, so now I'm going to get my stamp in place. And these stamp sets are exclusive to the Scraptastic kit, which are fun. You don't actually get them with the kit, you have to buy them separately. But I think I get every stamp set that coordinates with the kits that I purchase. So I'm getting out all those stamps. So the title's going to say, "Yum, this is so good," because it really is. That hamburger is just amazing. I certainly didn't need it, but I ate it. It was really good. Grab my acrylic, and then I'm going to get some VersaFine in black, some VersaFine stamping ink in black. I'm trying to position everything to make sure that I want it where it's at. So this is just another layer of interest, is adding stamping. Maybe I'll do a tutorial on stamping. We shall see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get that all nice and inked up. And make sure that I have that position. I don't have an eye for straight, so a lot of my stuff comes out lopsided. That's okay. Alright, so that's stamped and good to go. Alright, and put that to the side. And I think I'm ready to commit to that layer being there on top. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do any more stamping at this point. So I'm looking at that other stamp set. And I think what I'm going to do, there's a little stamp on there that says dinner. And I want to put something on that yellow tab there at the top so it doesn't look so empty. And I'm noticing as I'm doing the voiceover that stencil, the misting that I did, really shows through, and it looks really, really good. So I'm going to find an acrylic block to put this little stamp on. Then I consider another stamp there for a second, but that's a fleeting thought. Alright, so if you're playing along with me at this point, you should probably have a pretty cool background to your layout if you've been using some of these techniques. And I recommend that you just continue to try it out, continue to practice. That's the only way that you'll get better and more proficient at using mist and using stencils and other tools and trying different techniques. You want to make sure that you do it often. And it doesn't hurt to practice a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that there on the tab. I love stamping on my scrapbook pages. So there we go. That looks really good. And I use some VersaFine ink for that stamp. And at some point, Victoria is going to commit to actually putting this layer down on the layout. So I'm thinking at this point, do I want to add anything else? And what that misting accomplishes is it adds so much detail to the page that I don't have to over embellish if I don't want to. I can leave it the way that it is and it looks really good. So I decided that I want to add a little bit more interest to the side of that layer. So I get out one of my punches from EK Success. And this is one of those notebook punches, one of my favorite punches. So I'm going to go ahead and punch out the edge there. And I'm sorry for the camera shaking. I film with my iPad. And my tripod is sitting on top of my table and it's not as balanced as it needs to be. Okay, and so I'm trying to get that other little edge there. Adding just yet another point of interest in addition to everything else that I've done. And to be honest with you, this is a relatively simple layout, but it's something about creating that design in the background using the mists and the stencils that just really adds a lot of detail to the page, and there's not a whole lot of effort that was needed. Seriously, it was just, you know, taking the stencil as you saw and then practicing and spraying on it and creating a design. So I'm going to ruffle that a bit. And someday in, 2015, I'm going to actually go ahead and tape that down. Hear that whole piece down on the layout. All right, finally, it's time to adhere that layer down to my layout. That took forever. Okay, what am I doing next? Oh, yes. So I'm looking at these denim embellishments from We Are Memory Keepers. And I thought when I got this, you know what? I'm not going to use these. I don't really like them. I actually love them. So I'm going to get the sticker out that says Fave, because this is one of my favorite hamburger joints. I just love a freshly made hamburger. I've totally given up on McDonald's because that's totally not freshly made. But, I mean, if you're going to have a hamburger, you might as well get one that's really good. It's not good unless there's grease on the bag. That's my criteria. And their french fries are great, too. So I'm trying to decide where I want to position that at. And then I think I'm looking at some different embellishments, and I'm going to pull out a die cut that says Happy in a moment. There we go. Now I'm adding some journaling lines at the bottom of the layout. And in my journaling, I'm going to put hands down probably one of the best burgers in town, Kincaid's, fresh, hot, off the grill, a belly buster for sure. Yum. So this was a good treat meal. Absolutely love it. All right, so I'm finishing up the journaling of my yummy hamburger. Then I grab some, when I was digging through some of the die cuts that came with the kit, the die cut set is from Pink Paisley, and it's called Citrus Bliss. Okay, I can't talk. Citrus Bliss. So that die cut that says Happy and those labels come from that die cut set. And I needed something to sort of mount that word Fave on. And then I needed something behind that tab up top. And in a minute, I will adhere the word happy down using some Tombow Mono. And although that's not part of the title, I thought the words would just be fun on the layout. And that cursive happy just adds a little bit of movement and whimsy to the page as well. I'm going to adhere the little cork embellishment down as well. Love cork. Get that in place. And I think I have one other tab that I need to adhere, or label rather. I'm going to position that right behind the tab. Okay, I think I had to stop my camera there for a second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and position that label behind the tab. And in a minute, I'm going to grab some, I'm going to grab an arrow. And we got a whole bunch of these really cool vellum embellishments that came exclusive to the kit, and some little tiny chipboard embellishments as well. So I'm going to use a bit of those on the layout. And I'm thinking I want to add something to the top, which I will eventually do. I'm just trying to find the right elements. We all know how that goes. Okay, so now I'm going to take an arrow. It's a little chipboard arrow. No, die cut arrow, I'm sorry. I'm going to overlay that on the pink heart. And then I'm looking for something to put there at the top by the tab. So I'm going to take a vellum heart and put that there at the top. And then I'm going to embellish with some enamel dots. And then I think I'm going to call that good. All right, so enamel dots, part of the finishing touches. And then the last finishing touch is going to be a little outlining around the page. Okay, so here's the finished layout, and you can see that mist in the back, the sprinkles, and then also what I did with the stenciling. And it adds just a totally different feel to the page. And with this color, it's somewhat subtle, but you can still see it. Pretty fun, huh? So you can create all kinds of designs using your stencils and your mask and your mist, just spraying, trying different color combinations. The possibilities are completely endless. So here's my tip for you. Try it. Just give it a shot. And it takes a while to sort of get used to it. For those of you who have not done this type, I'm going to adjust my iPad there, have not used this type of mixed media before, but once you use it and you use it multiple times, you become a lot more comfortable with using mist. Again, it doesn't matter what brand that you get, they all kind of have their different little outcome on the paper. Or the different look, I should say, on your paper. I used textured cardstock, so that went right into the fiber of that paper real nicely, and it didn't take too long to dry. Even my little flub looks actually pretty good on this page. So there you go. Give it a try. Head on over to the Victoria Marie FB group page if you're not already a member, and become a member and share your layout with us. We would love to see it. If you have any questions, just post it in the comment section down below. Again, guys, just try it. You'll probably love it. And don't spend, also, before we finish, don't spend a lot of money on this. There are a lot of YouTube videos out there that give you instructions on how you can make your own mist. And while I think that's great, I think getting the actual mist with the good ingredients in it definitely helps. I think it looks a lot better. I've done both, made my own, and have used the manufactured products. I prefer the manufactured products. Take your coupons. Don't pay full price for it. You can usually find a lot of these on sale from various different vendors, scrapbooking vendors. So, but in any event, take some time out, give it a try, practice on some scrap piece of paper before you practice on your regular layouts. And guess what? If you mess up, it may end up looking really cool on your page, or it could be a total flub, but that's okay. You can always trash that layout and start all over. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, post it below. Thank you for joining me with this second tutorial in the Scrapbooking for Mortals. I believe our next one will continue on with mixed media, and we're going to talk about modeling paste, because I had a lot of questions about that. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.